Kagurabachi Chapter 92 is here. Y'all know the drill by now. Let's get straight into it. All right, so Chapter 92 is titled The Swordsmen, and we pick up right where we left off, which was in the middle of this chaotic hallway battle between Natsuki, Hokuto, Kiri, Hakari, and now Uruha and Yura, who have just fallen through the ceiling and joined them. So we're in the middle of that chaos, and Yura says, Hokuto. And Hokuto says, Yura, hey, was that Uruha? And Yura says, yeah. And Hokuto says, you saved him for me, didn't you? And Yura says, no, he was just too strong. Meanwhile, Uruha says, hey, it's been a minute, Natsuki. And Natsuki is like, why so sluggish? And Uruha says, an enemy's sorcery made my body heavy, but I'm good now. What about you? And Natsuki says, shut up. And we see that he's thinking to himself, his reaction time, and he's not even trying yet. And Natsuki says, this guy's the tough one, right? Looking at Kiri. And Kiri says, yeah. And Kiri thinks to herself, with an arm that strong, and it's not even his dominant arm, he spent some time swinging that sword. Kiri was referring to Hokuto with that inner monologue, just to be clear. But then Uruha chimes in and says, Kiri, go with Hakari to the Sennuchi. And Kiri says, me? I'm the only one who doesn't get to get payback? And Natsuki says, quit whining, brat. And Uruha says, dude, you're so rude. And Kiri says, fine, you old dudes handle these old dudes. Just make sure you kill them. And Uruha says, she's talking about you. And Natsuki says, no, it's you. And then we have this awesome panel of the four of them just kind of standing off against each other until Hokuto eventually says, Yoji Uruha, it's an honor to meet you. And Natsuki is just like, oh. And Hokuto continues and he winks and says, my name is Hokuto. I respect your feats with the enchanted blade in the Seitei War. And then both Natsuki and Uruha are just like, okay, this guy. And Hokuto continues and says, I've long dreamed of fighting you with my whole body and spirit. I'm the one who killed Ibuki Misaka. And Natsuki, chimes in at that, or locks in at that. Hokuto then says, my sorcery allows me to create armored dolls and operate them remotely. I'm also the one who killed Kunishige Rokuhira. I pierced his heart with a katana. And Natsuki says, and then he says, and the man next to me is Yura. And Yura says, Hokuto, what's this all about? And he says, hang on, I'm almost done. This man is our leader. And Yura says, hey. And Hokuto says, of course, he's the one who ordered Rokuhira and Misaka's deaths. We've all pledged our allegiance to him. He's irreplaceable. That pretty much covers it. As for sorcery, let's say anything goes. And then he reaches for his sword. But before Hokuto can even grip his sword, Uruha has already cleaved his entire hand from his body. This panel is sick. We just see Hokuto's tattooed Hishaku hand just fly up in the air after Uruha slices it off completely. And everyone's kind of like reacting to this. Natsuki is like, what? And Hokuto's eyes go wide and he thinks to himself, white purity style. Absolutely incredible. And then in an instant, everything is just on. Natsuki leaps up into the air and comes barreling down with both swords at Hokuto and Yura, and it takes the two of them to block him. And then he immediately charges his lightning sorcery and does a big explosion that pushes both of them back and destroys the hallway around them. We then get an establishing shot as the fight has moved into this new room, and it's specifically the Kamunabi headquarters third library. And it's this elegant looking library with books everywhere. So after Yura and Hokuto recover from that strike, Yura says, you really riled them up, didn't you? And Hokuto says, you're welcome. We then just cut to Uruha, who is 120% locked in, and he is readying the EI White Purity style. And we see Hokuto start to think as he looks at Uruha, and he thinks, Yoji Uruha, fighting prodigy. He attained the White Purity style at the tender age of 16. It's easy to imagine death in my future. Then out loud, Hokuto says, I've got goosebumps all over. And then the two men move to clash. Uruha goes with the White Purity style to strike Hokuto, but he is able to step back and make his own slash with his own sword that does connect with Uruha and gashes him across the chest and actually removes several of his fingers that are holding the hilt of his blade. Hokuto's face then goes wide with a mad smile, and he thinks to himself, my blow was a bit shallow, but at least I got his left hand. Then out loud he says, that's payback for my right hand. And Uruha thinks to himself, he's good. He stepped backwards and evaded my sword by the tiniest margin. And at that precise moment the blade missed, he moved in and countered, all with exquisite timing. His coordination and perception are exceptional. And then the two men continue to clash blades for a little bit. And then Uruha thinks to himself, and his strength, as he basically goes back to back with Yura. And they realize that they just came back to back with each other. So Uruha is facing Hokuto, and Yura is facing Natsuki, both men approaching each other. Yura then flips his blade and stabs behind him to try and hit Uruha, but Uruha is able to kind of duck and dodge out of the way. Meanwhile, Natsuki just blazes straight past the two of them towards Hokuto, and he screams out, hey! And Hokuto says, hey. And Natsuki says, don't tell me you're satisfied with old Uruha here, who's been sitting in a hot spring all this time, looking like a prune. And Hokuto is taken aback by this, and he thinks to himself, whoa, this guy wasn't fighting at full power earlier. And we see that Natsuki is just charging straight at him and basically lets his blade, one of his blades, roll off his finger towards Hokuto's face. And Hokuto is just like staring at this blade right here. And then Natsuki basically uses that as an opening and kind of ducks around behind him and gashes Hokuto on the side. And then Natsuki thinks to himself, thinking about Uruha, he says, his initial movements are insanely fast, but he lacks that edge. Once you've mastered a technique, it tends to stick with you. But that instinctual edge, intuition, split-second judgment call, and moving like a knife, you lose that stuff fast if you're not continually exposed to battle. Those fine details are even more crucial than technique when master warriors fight. And I never stopped fighting. Natsuki then barrels into Hokuto even further, knocking the two of them over this balcony in the library down to the next floor. And Natsuki thinks to himself, my edge is sharper than ever. And he thinks back to when Uruha was granted the enchanted blade from Kunishige, and he thinks to himself, all of you sword fighter jerks are going to eat crow. Watch my back. Natsuki Misaka's dashing past you. Yura then barrels over the balcony after them, and he thinks to himself, sorry Hokuto, but I like to take them one at a time and make sure we finish them. So he jumps after Natsuki and is going to strike against his back, basically 2v1ing Natsuki and ignoring Uruha. And Uruha thinks to himself, Natsuki is razor sharp. All this time I was relaxing in those hot baths, he was still at it. And then there's this beast, referring to Yura, who's managing to handle Natsuki's attacks like it's nothing. Everyone except me is prepared and in peak form. All the more reason to kill them now. We then get another cold panel of Uruha. This time he's just completely silhouetted in shadow, and the narrator says, the former prodigy. His skills were honed in battle as he constantly evaded death. His sword's original purpose was the skill of the living. I think that's a weird translation issue. But surrounded by master warriors, at the brink of death, his instincts came flooding back. And then we get this panel of Uruha gripping his sword sheath with his teeth, because if you recall, he's missing fingers on his left hand. So he's using that in order to perform the white purity style. And then he blasts off from this balcony and engages in that three-man clash. The four swordsmen then clash mid-air before exploding down to the floor below. And then we are hit with this gorgeous double spread of the four of them basically standing there having a face-off. And that's where the chapter ends. Y'all, you should always go and read the chapter for yourselves to see the paneling, but this one especially, the action choreography was just so insane. Hokuzono, how do you keep doing this week after week, man? I love this chapter. This is so peak. I'm just imagining when this gets animated, it's going to go berserk, okay? This cliffhanger is gonna destroy people when this gets animated, but oh my god, man. We got four master swordsmen here. I can't wait to see what happens. And man, Uruha reminding everyone why he was chosen for an enchanted blade and why he is called the prodigy. Just so cold. Uruha stocks on the rise. But y'all, that's actually going to have to do it for this one. Today has been an insanely busy day for me with all of the JJK news, so I'm sorry we don't have more thoughts here, but let me know yours, and thanks for watching.